a little bit about some of the arguments that AT&T is using in order to justify this merger, and let me address them and tell you why I think they really don't fly. Well, the first argument is, well, if we buy T-Mobile and their spectrum and their towers, we will have a stronger network. You know, all those drop calls that everybody complains about? And in fact, it's funny, yesterday I actually saw a commercial where T-Mobile was making fun of AT&T for their drop calls. I have to say I had to laugh out loud when I saw that. My answer is, AT&T, take the $39 billion that you are going to use to try to buy T-Mobile and invest it in your network. You'll make it a stronger network. Take the spectrum that you have, but you have not built out yet, okay, and make your services better, make your network better. And AT&T argues, well, we need T-Mobile spectrum. Well, you've got spectrum that you actually haven't yet developed. So why don't you do that first? Why don't you invest in your network instead of buying out a competitor? A second argument that AT&T makes is that if you look market by market, you will see that there is a lot of competition, at least 5 other carriers. So who are these carriers that they're talking about? Well, they're talking about Metro PCS, Cellular One, Cellular South, Leap. Have you heard of those companies? I bet most of you haven't. And why haven't you? Because they're small, they're regional carriers, they don't have the iPhone, they don't have the cool Android phones. It's like saying that Walmart competes with the mom and pop store on Main Street in every local market. And of course, that's really ridiculous. You really can't compare them, and they are not true competition. All those regional carriers are spectrum starved. They don't have strong networks. Some of them are not even 3G networks. So it's kind of silly to say that those folks are actual competitors to AT&T or even T-Mobile for that matter. The other big argument that AT&T uses to justify this merger is that, well, they look at a GAO study that goes back 10 years. I think it was 1999 to 2009 or 2000 to 2010. And that study showed that despite consolidation in the wireless market, cellular phone service prices did not go up. Okay, they went down. And I've got 2 responses to that. The first response to is, in what electronics market that you've ever heard of have prices not gone down over 10 years? Think about your digital television set. I mean, think about any kind of consumer electronics or phone service. I mean, there's no such thing as prices going up. They all go down. The question is not whether prices go down, it's how much they go down. So how fast they go down and how innovative the market is. Response number 2, and I think this one is the more important response, is who cares about prices for phone service? Nobody uses the phone anymore. It's all about how much broadband data you use. It's about how much text messaging you use. And in those markets, prices have not gone down. In fact, one can argue that prices have gone up because in addition to those bandwidth caps I talked about before, which punish you for using more bandwidth, there are also hidden fees. For example, termination fees. So most carriers, if you want to get a nice smartphone, lock you into a 2-year contract. 2-year contract, if you decide to break it after a year or 6 months, you sometimes have to pay $200 or more to terminate. So, you know, whatever that GAO study showed, it's not particularly relevant for the way people use telephones today. The fourth argument is that this merger will allow AT&T to build out to 95% of all Americans, particularly in the very, very rural areas. But this argument is nonsense. T-Mobile doesn't have cell towers or spectrum in those rural areas. And AT&T has had the opportunity to build out in those very rural areas for many, many years. Again, it could take the $39 billion that it wants to use to take out its competitor, T-Mobile, and build out its spectrum and towers in those rural areas if it really, really wants to ensure that there's greater coverage for all Americans. But they don't need the merger to do it.